All right, we get to the last year's Wooden Spooners, the Wests Tigers. They start the comp with the Titans, Knights, and Bulldogs, which is quite a cosy little. If they're going to go any good, not a bad way to start the year. Offence, Oliver.
If they play well, yeah. But if not, then
they play the Cowboys, Dragons, Knights, Bunnies, Raiders, Eagles, Storm, and Titans twice. Again, not a bad draw.
Did you just say Barney's Raiders?
Not a bad
Bunnies.
draw.
Oh, I thought you said Barney's Raiders. I was like, when did you switch teams?
3 Thursdays, 5 Fridays, 9 Saturdays, 6 Sundays, 15 7-day turnarounds. That's all the news. Tim Sheens is coach.
Is he really?
Holding the form for the fort for Benji Marshall to take over in 2025. They've lost New Brown, Luke Garner, Guildhart, Hastings, Leilua, Little, Madden, McKaylee, Musgrove, Peachy, Roberts, Tarmo, Tuolungi. They've picked up one John Bateman, Fainu, Clemmer, Happy Coruscant, Matamua has been upgraded. I think he was a junior there last year. Papaihi, Isaiah, Fanua Pole, full-time, Sakuru, Will Smith from the Titans, Charlie Staines from the Panthers, Brandon Tumeth, Brendan Wakeham signed this week to cover the halves depth. Not a bad little 4 losses and gains book there, Oliver. I know you're excited. Would you like first chat, or do you want me to talk about what their team will look like?
Well, surely you've got that. This would be one of the teams you would have done.
That's the only one I actually did of it. No, so I've gone from back to front. Laurie at fullback, Staines and Nofaluma on the wings. I've gone Tommy Lowe and Stafford Toa in the centres.
That's done the same.
Dewey, Brooks, front row, Clemmer and Stefano. Happy at hooker. Isaiah Papaihi, Bateman in the back row. Offengawe locks the scrum. Twile, Blaw, Pole and Jake Simpkin on the bench for now, depending who they want to go with as their spine cover. Pretty good forward pack. Barn.
I think they might start with 12, just to...
I've gone with that,
beginning of the year at least, until Ukatamanu shows his wares.
Really, that was the only contention,
considerably.
apart from your wing, whichever you want to go on.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you got a few options on that wing spot for Staines with, you might see by the end of the year, depending on performances, with Kapoa and Mamalo. But yeah, there's some good competition in this squad, and it's a much better looking squad than what it was this time last year. I can bet money on that. Probably the best recruitment in the off-season out of any team, I think, going forward into this year. Cool. Look a bit perplexed there, Ollie.
I'm just thinking about best recruitment, maybe for what they are, but I don't see the Tigers making the 8 or anything.
They just filled the holes that they needed to fill in their squad.
I possibly might be underrating the old Tig Pies a little bit here, because I've gone Nofaluma and Mamalo as my wingers. I don't think Staines starts the season, but I think that might be for a reason, because I've got Laurie, Nofaluma and Mamalo as 3 pressure players because of Staines, because I think Staines is right in the periphery. So if any of those 3 players, and we know Nofaluma was playing reserve grade until he got that loan move to Melbourne, right? So there are players who I think Sheens will sort of stay, and that's why he's brought Charlie Staines in, to be right underneath those 3 blokes. And if any one of them sort of drops off, he has someone to just come straight in and probably not do any worse. So I feel like that sort of Staines, and I feel like we will see Staines playing for the Tigers within a few weeks, depending on who drops out. I've got Twile starting up prop as well over Utoi Kamanu as well. I don't have Sean Blaw in my side. It's purely because of the injuries that he's just gone through. I think maybe if he's playing consistent football in New South Wales Cup, he probably gets that call up onto the bench. But I think now it's sort of got to the point where he has been hurt a fair bit, and it's time to sort of reprove yourself again and prove that you can go a fair stint without actually getting hurt.
So who are you looking to take that spot? Safe Arth?
Safe Arth, I'd say. Yeah. And Jake Simpkin's probably under a bit of pressure. He's playing behind a New South Wales hooker, but he wasn't blow away last year. You could take him and Little one way or another. And
yeah, absolutely.
They did, at least a bit pacier than Little, and maybe a little bit more creativity. But look, I'm optimistic. Obviously, no team's going from wooden spoon to 4th, but I think it's a big improving year. And I think there's blokes here, we actually probably don't know 4 or 5 blokes that could end up in his team by the end of the year. They're very bullish on Josh Filady. Is it Filady or Filady? They've had another young fella training at full, apparently covering fullback at the moment. trying to think of his name. I was just reading about him. I'll find it in a sec. But I do think Laurie starts there. Where are we here? Oh, Jay Rambula is a Kebra Park graduate, but he's been training in the, I guess, probables at the training sessions apparently as fullback. So I guess we'll see where that goes. But the forward pack's massive. Like the back end of last year, they were woeful through the middle. They were really woeful, apart from Alfred Galway. It's a completely different team, and I think they will play as such. I've been reading a lot about a lot more ball in motion, a lot more typical old school Tim Sheens. They want to score points. And that's why I'm actually going to look. Obviously, it would have been nice to keep Jackson Hastings. I don't know the ins and outs of that completely, but at least you're coming into this year without that question. Last year, no one seemed to know who was going to be playing in those halves.
Yep.
This year, you're coming in knowing who your 6 and 7 are. And I was watching. I watched Luke Brooks's. They had Luke Brooks's debut game on NRL on Fox, where he had like 3 try assists and a try and whatever, and tore apart someone. And some of his other highlights, but I'm going to make a case that I think he's just been playing in the wrong team for, well, obviously being the West Tigers, but
still he is still playing in the same team.
He's one of the quickest, if not the quickest. He's probably top 3 quickest halfbacks in the comp, maybe alongside Moses and I don't know, Nico. But in terms of halves, but anyway, so a ball in motion team where he can sort of rotate to stay to the left of the field, stick to his running game rather than try to be a controlling, structured. He's been stuck under Michael Maguire, and before that was whoever was Potter and Cleary for a bit, where that didn't suit him. I think you're going to see a different style of play. I think you're going to see Dewey handling a lot of the general kicking, which is what he wanted, and Brooks just chiming in and looking for broken field stuff around the offloads, getting offloads off Puppy and Bateman and the like. So, I'm optimistic it can be. And it's very much a last throw of the dice for him, because if he goes no good this year, he's gone. So I think he will improve behind this forward pack. I think Appy's massive, direction's massive there. He'll lead a lot of the playmaking, probably do a lot of the short kicking as well, really. Like he did a little bit at Penrith, not completely with Cleary there, but he does have that nice grubber behind the line and things like that. I think we see a lot more Dewey of the belly of the ball bombs like Burton. We see more of, I guess, a Burton mould rather than an old school whatever Dewey was last year, centre in a 5'8" body. I think he only played 6 for a handful of games anyway because he's back from injury. But I'm pretty optimistic. I think the play style is going to be completely different. I think they can be in and around that sort of 8, 9, 10. I'm not saying they're going to make the 8, but I think I can see a typically disappointing 9th. How wrong am I? I think you look disgusted.
I'm not trying to be too disrespectful to the old Tigers here, but no. I do think at least what I'm predicting, and I do acknowledge that I could be completely wrong, and I love your optimism around the Tigers for once, but I think at the end of the day, we might look back at this Hastings-Clemmer swap as maybe where the Tigers might have dropped the ball. I just think they needed a half there, just someone. I know Hastings wasn't the best in the world, but I think the thing is too, last year he missed a lot of game time through suspension and through injury, and I will say this now, if he played every game in the year for the Tigers that season, based off of how he played when he was in that side, I don't think they finished last. I feel like they're missing that. Whoever he might have pissed off, or if he wasn't on the greatest terms with John Bateman or whatever, I personally would have sort of valued Hastings over that, just because the Tigers needed a halfback for so long. And like 2019, 2020, 2021, Luke Brooks was the big issue, but with what was happening with him and trying to figure out something in the halves. And at least for me, in 2022, despite finishing last, weirdly enough, it seemed like they had someone there. It's just he wasn't playing for the suspension and the injury. So I just don't know. I guess the Tigers are more of a team that I guess have got to prove themselves to me on the field and seeing what a Dewey and Brooks can do, because we've seen Brooks in the past. We've seen a bit of Dewey in the past as well at 5'8". And I guess I've more just got to see it to believe it. I think they have improved immensely in terms of their forward pack, but if we look at the Tigers team in recent years, we talked about the comparison to the Warriors this year. I don't think their forward pack wasn't great, but I don't think it was terrible. I'd say their forward pack was probably still better than their back line in terms of their performances last year.
You've got to keep in mind injury killed it a lot. Lose 12, like they lost 12, they lost there's 50 tackles a game, they lost. Their middle defence, after they sacked Madge, their middle defence fell to pieces.
I just think because, their defence going into last year, and I think we were talking about it, and their forward pack, it was it was close to a top 8 forward pack, right? And they've got a top 8 forward pack now, right? I just don't know if the other pieces can sort of come together. Their backline can be very susceptible to mistakes as well. And that's something they sort of like Mamalo. I thought Stafford Toll was very good last year, and I've got him in the centres.
He was a surprise
this year
because when we signed him, shook my head. But he was very impressive. Of everyone, he was probably
Nofaluma's
shining lights.
Nofaluma's obviously a bit of a coin flip, and I think Laurie, while he's mostly been good, he's not necessarily been great, and there have been some games where he's sort of been a bit below par. But at the end of the day, if that sort of comes together and the forward pack is what you'd expect it to be, they will have a good year. But at the moment, I'm probably tipping, you know what, about what I'm tipping for the Titans, as I said, like 11th to 17th. I can't really see them contending for the top 8 at all in 2023.
Barn.
Yeah, they've definitely improved the squad a hell of a lot. To me, it'll come down to the way that they're going to play their football. As Ollie mentioned, there doesn't seem to be an out-and-out half in this side, and it does look like you're going to have Brooks on one side and Dewey on the other side, and they're basically both going to be running 5/8s, playing outside of a middle, where I think the big difference to the way the Tigers will play their football this year will be off the back of Coruscant. Through the middle of the field, it's going to be a lot of short balls off the dummy half, back inside off your running 5/8s, and maybe the odd rainbow ball out to a winger or a centre to maybe dive over and score some points outside there. But I think the Tigers are going to basically try and play that roll through the middle type of football, up speed, up tempo through the middle, off the back of Coruscant, with a lot of short passing inside and outside of their pivotal playmakers. And it's going to depend on how they're going to be able to unlock the defences by doing that. I think a lot of that will come off. It'll be the first 2 tackles of every set. Pretty much will tell you how the Tigers are going to set up for the next 4.
And to Ollie's point earlier about the Clement, yes, Hastings is a loss, but Clement gives you that first hit up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which we haven't had for...
Clemmer's, I just want to get that out. Clemmer is a good signing within that specific context for the Tigers.
For your first and second
I just don't think the deal...
Yeah, absolutely. And then a lot of it's going to come with, as I said, inside-outside balls off Brooks and Dewey for the likes of your Papali'i and Bateman and what they can do off the back of that. The middle defence should be much better than what it was last year. Again, as Ollie said, they're a little bit susceptible, especially in defence out wide, where they can be found out on the edges in their defence. And I think it will take a little while just to get that connection going, especially with the halves and their outside backs. The first probably month or 6 weeks is going to be very forward dominated through the middle of the field for the Tigers, and they're going to have to be playing quicker ruck speed than the other side to sort of win those first few games in the year. I can see them being a lot better than what they were last year, but I think they're a couple of spots off the 8, to be honest, by the end of the year. I've got a big watch on Blore and Pole. I've got massive raps on Pole, and everyone's had raps on Blore, but he hasn't played footy for 2 years, so it's going to be interesting. Stefano is under pressure, realistically. Yeah. The bloke was on the edge of New South Wales selection last year. I know he missed a lot of time with injury, but there was a lot of time where he just wasn't picked as well, or given very limited minutes last year.
And I know they've got raps on Matamua, and who I think played 1 game last year.
Yep.
And they've got another. Like they reckon these kids coming through a gun.
Yeah.
So,
right. I think this is probably Naden's last year. I'm not even sure if he gets a crack at the top squad at different parts of this year.
We didn't mention him, really, did we? He's still got 3 years left.
I have him starting, but I also have him as an under pressure player because of Talau.
He wouldn't be out of place on a wing either if they needed to. So
yeah, if they absolutely needed to. The kicking options for this team, I think that's where you're going to find a lot of struggles for this team.
Yeah.
Especially with the long kicking game. Brooks under pressure with his kicking does tend to kick it out a fair bit, or just kick one off the side of the boot and it goes to the wrong side of the field and all that kind of stuff. Dewey's shown that he's got a very good bomb, but I don't know if he's got a lot else apart from a very big bomb.
Yeah.
And, I think Appy's going to have a lot of work to do to drag this team up to be competitive for a lot of games this year. So
I just think as well, if I can sort of encapsulate what I'm thinking of the Tigers, I feel like there will be games this year where we're sitting here and talking and thinking the Tigers were winning a game and they lost by 6-4 or 2 points to a sort of a top 8 side or a team on the periphery of the 8. Right. Why did they lose? Well, Clemmer had a great game. Offhand Gowie had a great game. Publi had a great game. Corus had a great game. But 3 out of the 5 back players dropped 3 balls each or something. Like I just feel like that their margins for error has just not been.
And Tim Sheens,
someone threw an
style
intercept,
ball in
shit
motion.
kick.
Tim Sheens is always that ball in motion, inside ball, outside ball, sort of, and that does open up. If you're not clinical, it does open up
a lot of errors.
Ball,
with consistent ball movement.
Yeah.
But I think if they keep it short and compact, I think they'll be competitive in a lot of games this year. Especially with the size. It's probably one of the biggest packs going around, to be honest, with Twal, Offengawi, Clemmer, Papali'i. There's some really big boys there.
And they're mobile too. They're not just...
exactly.
Your
Clemmer's probably the least mobile of the lot of them, and he's still got a little bit about him.
Well, statistically, he was the second or third best prop.
Oh, yeah. He made meters upon meters upon meters. Well, he's not going to sidestep you, but...
I know the Tigers like doing swap deals, and they got a decent enough forward pack. How about doing a few swap deals with the Titans? We can work something out.
Sexton for...
How'd you
Brian Kelly and Patrick Herbert?
Well, Brian Kelly and Patrick Herbert for, I don't know, Utoi Kamanu, I guess.
And Sexton. You don't want Sexton.
I guess we'll take Utoi Kamanu, I guess.
Look, it goes out saying big year for Luke Brooks, but...
it's a put up or shut up year for
otherwise
Luke Brooks.
He could well be in England next year.
Yeah, 100%.
Perhaps by choice.
Perhaps by choice. Big year for Dewey too.
Well, he's
obviously
both
in and out of the side,
being
in the centres. He's talked how much he wants to play 5'8", so he really has to stamp himself as a half if that's where he wants his career to go. Otherwise, he may end up back out at the centres for someone, and it may not be a first grade team. But he's got plenty of potential. Very good running game, strong fella. He's not too bad in defence, but he's going to have to prove his wares this year.
There's no excuses for the halves now. The forward pack's not going to get bashed. They're not going to get owned.
Not very often.
You're going to see... They're going to be given every chance.
Yeah,
and if they're not up to it, there'll be an 18 or 19-year-old in there by round 10, probably. Rua Nagatakura was someone who was impressive in the trials last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can see him putting a lot of pressure on Jake Simpkin.
And
could
I
well
don't
be
think
in the
Simpkins will be holding him out of the side for too long.
I think we'll see him. But I think I would almost go as far to say the team that West Tigers put in foot in round 1 could look nothing like what it does in round 20. Yeah. For better, probably for better, maybe for worse. But we'll see how we go. Like I said, I think probably that obviously you're saying 8's optimistic, but I agree, sort of 9, 10, 11. They won't finish last. I'm pretty confident in saying that. If they do, there's some serious issues with my mental health.
In terms of where I have them on my ladder, I do have them bottom 4 currently. But I do think there's about 6 teams where you could sort of interchange them.